Founder Space, Startup Supercharged. I'm Captain Hawk, CEO of Founder Space, the leading global startup accelerator. I'm also author of the award-winning books, Make Elephants Fly, Surviving a Startup, and The 5 Forces. 70% of companies or more, they don't fire people for not coming in. Like they don't, because they know that a lot of the people that they would be firing are their best employees. So even though they put in a mandate, they don't always enforce it. And then, you know, some people come in and some people don't. So this whole thing, it's kind of, managers aren't usually handling it right. So the really progressive companies, and a lot of them tend to be younger companies, like a lot of my friends are working for startups in Silicon Valley. And a lot of them ask their employees to come in. They say, we really want you to come in, but they provide flexibility, which is the right way of doing it. It's saying, look, we would love it if you come in, but you can't just say you have to be here and not give them a good reason, because these tech workers have gotten used to being, we call it spoiled, right?
Yeah.
Really, really nice. They've gotten used to this, and especially the good ones, they know they're still in demand. And what really tends to work if you want to retain your best employees and actually create a better environment is, instead of mandating stuff, to allow different teams to decide within the team what works best for the team. And then to give people a reason to come in. And a reason to come in usually comes down to different factors. So, you know, why is it important to be in the office? Well, one of the big reasons to be in the office is because they've actually found that casual encounters with people in the office lead to sharing of knowledge. You know, like, it's not like a formal meeting where you're sitting down in a room meeting. It's like when you bump into somebody in the hallway. And Steve Jobs was a huge proponent of this. That's why he designed the new Apple headquarters in the shape of a donut, right? Because he wanted people to have to bump into each other as they cross, either they walk through all the halls, right? Or they crisscross the center of that donut in the open and mingle and say, oh, I haven't seen you in 2 weeks, and start, what are you working on? Because this type of interaction breeds innovation, it breeds information exchange, it breeds, you know, connection between people, which makes them collaborate better because, oh, I'm seeing you. So one of the biggest things, see, if people look at their lives, like right now, they're like, why would I go into the office? Because that commute, usually the commute time, sucks up so much of my day. I'm actually more productive at home because people aren't disturbing me every 5 minutes, you know, with different things.
Exactly.
But why would I go into the office? Well, the reason people go into the office that's good is, one, these casual connections. You need to explain these are really important connections. You don't get those over Zoom calls because you have to make a formal meeting. You have to make a formal meeting for a Zoom call. So you're not going to casually have a Zoom call with random people. It's just not going to happen. Those people you don't see at all. So a big reason to come in is to connect with these other people. Another big reason is to feel part of a team, emotional, right? So you have to explain to employees, it's not necessarily about your productivity. Like, we aren't getting you in there because we think you're slacking at home, because the data suggests that people aren't actually slacking at home. In fact, they are being just as productive, and they are actually, that commute time they're saving, they're putting 40% of that, usually 40% of that commute time back into their work. So the other 60% they're putting into their time with their family and friends and like that, but their kids, and really important. But 40% is going into back into the work. So they're putting actually more time in when they're working remotely. But the reason to go in is because managers have to explain, it's really important that we bond. Like, it's really important that we meet face to face, that we understand each other, because we will have conversations with each other that are totally different than we'll have instant messaging or over Zoom than we will have in person, right? When you see a person, you interact with them in a different way, you ask different questions. It's a much different exchange of information. So, and people like to feel bonded, like, to their coworkers. That's one of the biggest joys of working, is the relationship you develop with your coworkers. And if you're isolated, you don't get that. So the really smart managers with companies are stressing activities and things like that people can do with their coworkers in the office. Like, it's somebody's birthday on Wednesday. We want, everybody come into the office and celebrate Mary's birthday if you're available, right? Not mandating you have to be in the office on Wednesday, but wow, it's Mary's birthday. Are you going to be the one who's not there, right?
Yeah.
Then employees think, oh, it's my decision, I don't have to go, but I actually really want to see Mary and I want to show her that I like her. I'm going to go into the office, right? Different classes, that people can have, exercise classes, things like that. Educational things. We're bringing in a special speaker to help educate you on this thing that, how to work better and how to have a better work-life balance, whatever it is, right? All these different, those give people a reason to be in the office that's positive. Not like, oh, I have to be there or my boss, they're going to fire me. Let's see if they fire me, No, it's like, no, I actually want to be there. There's different things going on. So the really smart managers are doing this. I know a lot of my friends still, like, their company said, please come into the office. They're startups. We really want you in there to be working. And the thing that's drawing them in are free lunches. Like, they're like, I'm going into the office because I don't want to cook and I get a free lunch. So like, those perks, the smart companies are, even though they're laying off people, they aren't eliminating all those perks. Because honestly, a lot of those perks were available to people in the office. If you're out of the office, you don't get them. So the really smart managers are saying, look, we want to offer perks, not perks that you use out of the office, like a gym perk, right? But we want perks that you use in the office. Like, can we, and different ways of doing activities in the office that are really positive. And if you do that, it's much better. So the big difference, like the old guard companies, IBM, Goldman Sachs, you name it, they're sort of falling back on mandates, which is a very uncreative way. And the CEOs who are more cognizant of that, it's a psychological issue and more than it is, a productivity issue or a coordination issue between people. Those things we've worked out. We can work over Zoom. We know that, right? We know people are creative. But if it's a psychological issue, how do I address this? How do I get people to want to come into work and to see all the benefits?
Right. I agree 100% what you just said, because it's very important for the human interaction, because now our company is remote working as well. So a lot of things.
Yeah. So you don't have those relationships with people.
Yeah.
And then, so you have to think, if people have relationships with people, how do you make those how can you emphasize those relationships? Like, can we have a special lunch day where we go out to lunch on Wednesdays, like to a fun place that then people will come to the office and participate in that event? Or can we have things after work that people participate in? These are that are, right, tied into the company. These are really important.
Yeah, exactly. So you're saying that the layoff is actually like a global thing, not just in tech industry. And
well, it's spreading, like it's spreading, right? So at first the tech industry was hardest hit because tech overhired, because they the fundamental premise was tech is, these companies are growing expensially, right? These are fast growing companies. So we need to hire for the future because we're going to be so much bigger next year. All of a sudden, the stock, the investors, the stock market said, we don't care how fast you're growing, we care how profitable you are, right? If profit matters, cut the employee. Growth doesn't matter, profit matters. The whole mindset of the management changes. They're not going to just be handing us free cash now or giving us a pass on our, on our profitability. Then we need to start making sure we're profitable. That's our number one thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And it came as it's very surprising, where like, because Google and Meta, they're very focused on like people oriented, but during the layoff, there have been things where the employees came out and say that they are being laid off in a very like ungoogly way. Like, they just got an email all of a sudden at 2 a.m. and then they're out. And I'm just interesting about how we perceive tech companies, like big companies, are all very like good for employees, but now it's become like this. How do you think this kind of layoff will impact the whole in hiring or workplace culture in the Silicon Valley?
Well, again, it's coming down to it always comes down to individual leaders, right? The
Okay,
CEOs of
okay.
these companies. But let me, so you don't want to overgeneralize, like,
Right,
because,
right.
as we saw in Silicon Valley, there's a huge divergence between
Mhm.
some CEOs and others, right? Some are still
Right.
being, but even CEOs like Mark Benioff, who was saying everybody can work remotely for as long as they want, right? He's
Mhm.
regretting his words. He's eating his words. He was like, well, actually, we do want people back in
Yeah.
the office. I want, he paid an enormous amount for this huge skyscraper, the
Yeah,
Salesforce
yeah, yeah,
building,
yeah.
and it's, pretty empty. So he
Mhm.
wants to get people back in there. What, but so my honest opinion is,
Mhm.
it's even in Silicon Valley, where you have a lot of new young companies that are forward thinking, we have a divergence. So we have the managers who are just like, get people back in the office, mandate it, make them, that's the only way you're going to get them. They're sort of like the Elon Musks of the world. They tend to be kind of alpha male dominant,
Mhm.
personalities who just like, my rule is the law, right? And that's
Yeah.
more the old world thinking, because that mirrors like the old companies, right? Even though they're a new company, they're
Mhm.
thinking like the old companies. Other CEOs are thinking much more along the lines of, we want to make this a great place to work. We want to make it so that our employees want to come back to the office.
Mhm.
And with the layoffs, though, and it's really not the layoffs, it's also just the opening up of COVID going away.
Right.
People are finding that not having employees in the workplace totally has a definite impact on company culture, a
Mhm.
definite impact on the way people communicate and the way companies innovate. And people are more and more realizing that at the very least, a hybrid culture is best. So
Yeah.
meaning certain people can work from home more, other people need to be in the office more. And you have to do this intelligently based on people's roles. So there are certain roles where being in the office is really important, and
Mhm.
I would say for a lot of HR roles where somebody wants to sit down and have a private conversation with you, a lot of managerial roles, being in the office, being there is really important. If they're more of an individual contributor and they can do their job from home, well, let them work from home, at least,
Mhm.
if not all the time, part of the time. And this is especially true for mothers. So, and fathers if they take care of the kids, but a lot
Yeah.
of fathers don't. But
Yeah.
especially true for mothers. The bottom line is, women, like, I think it's somewhere like 90% of women, they, who are mothers and work and that work remotely, they want to keep working remotely, right?
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
wouldn't they? Because, they have kids to pick up from daycare. They have all these different things going on. Working remotely as a mother is they define it, 90% define it as their number one job benefit. Like their number one job benefit is being able to work remotely, right? When they're a mother. So, especially the younger the kids are. So this, you don't want to take that away from women if you don't have to. Women who are mothers and fathers who take care of the kids, you want to allow them if they're good employees and they can do their job remotely, please let them continue to do that. It's a huge advancement in society. It, makes our kids better, makes families healthier, all of these things. And if they're still being productive, they're being productive. So really looking at the individual person and their needs and their role in the company. And let's say that
Right.
individual is in a role where they're a manager and it really is important for them to be in the office because, you want more people in the office. And if the manager isn't there, why would the other people come in? Maybe they switch roles, right? Maybe you suggest, oh, you go into more of an individual contributor role that is better for remote and have somebody else do the managerial role. You can be creative about these solutions, but the smart managers in Silicon Valley, and if they're in a big company too, that's great. But the
Mhm.
really smart managers in Silicon Valley, they are looking at the individual, number one, and the role, number two, and then number three, how can we adapt a hybrid system? How can we adapt a hybrid system to actually match our workers in the best way possible to get the best results.
Right, right. So like don't generalize the concept. So is there a difference between how Apple works and how Facebook works? Like a newer one and the older one, or you think they're just different from the managers?
Well, it's funny because, Mark Zuckerberg took his cues from Elon Musk. He's another one of these like type controlling types, right? So like a lot of it comes from the CEO on down, right? The
Okay.
company culture,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Not so much the age of the company. And that's one thing I
Oh,
want you to think about.
okay.
Because again, it's psychology, right? So
Mm-hmm.
and the CEO ultimately is going to demand stuff. So Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg's more like, I want people in the office. I want, he looked at Elon Musk. I want to lay off a lot of people. Like Elon, it's just sort of his personality. So you're
Right.
looking at these different companies and they are, whether they're, in Silicon Valley, and they're behaving in very different ways. Of course, if you get to a really old school company, they're going to kind of act like old school companies, right? But in Silicon Valley, it's just not heterogeneous. There's not a homogeneous culture, right? There's a culture that's
Mm-hmm.
very much defined by the leaders of each individual company. On average, though,
Okay.
it's Silicon Valley companies tend to be more open-minded to new ideas, more
Mm-hmm.
open to hybrid work, more open to tailoring policies towards individual needs and individual positions,
Mm-hmm.
rather than kind of the old school thinking that one size fits all.
Right. Okay. I thought there is a difference between like how Apple works and how Google works because
So again, it's
yeah.
going to come down
Mm-hmm.
to Tim Cook,
Right.
and
Right.
Mark
Right. Right.
Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and I think Tim Cook is a much, how should I say, he is the type who is not an old school thinker, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, although Apple does have a lot of its old school stuff, they're very controlling about,
Yeah.
their technology and stuff. It remains, I think Mark Zuckerberg is probably taking a harsher line than, from
Right.
everything I hear, than Tim Cook is taking.
Mm-hmm.
But Apple still is, a more mature company, more kind of grounded in its ways
Yeah.
than a lot of the startups. You look at the startups, and a lot of them want people in the office, but they're being very flexible. They're
Right.
really being much more flexible than a lot of the larger companies, because look at Facebook, as even though it's newer, it's a large company now, right? It's a
Yeah. Yeah.
big company, and Apple's a big giant company. So these are big giant companies with CEOs who have their mindset. A lot of the startups are much more flexible.
Mm-hmm. I see. I see.
Yeah. And
So
when I
how do
say
you think
startups, I mean much earlier stage.
yeah, right. I know. So how do you think in how can other companies and maybe other places can take advantage of this layoff and maybe recruit more tech talent when like this big companies are um kind of putting their talent back on the market?
Well, it's great for companies that need talent. And what we've been seeing,
Mm-hmm.
the job growth in the US, the job market's still extremely tight.
Right.
It's extremely tight in service jobs, like super tight, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also still like most of the workers getting laid off in Silicon Valley are finding new jobs. Like it
Yeah,
may take
yeah,
them a little while to find the right job, but they're being rehired. So
yeah.
because so the the fact is, some of them, if they're older workers, they tend to kind of drop out of the job market. They're like, I got laid off. I'm my 50s or whatever, and it's not worth going back. But the
Yeah.
younger workers, they're actively looking and they're finding jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this has been a real boon for companies that had a hiring deficit. Like they literally did not have enough tech workers to fill their jobs. So they're like, great, now we can get some of these people we couldn't get
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
We might be able to get them at a little more reasonable price.
Mm-hmm.
We can get the talent that, we might not have been able to recruit them because we're not a big name like Google
Yeah.
or Apple, like all the best ones. But now that Google, Apple, Amazon are laying off, we can get
Mm-hmm.
that top tier worker that would have gone to them, but will now
Yeah.
come to us. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing companies that wouldn't have been able to access those top tier guys. And that's why those top tier guys, they can say, I want to work from home because they know they're top tier, right? Some other company that couldn't have got them before will be jump on hiring them. And that's basically the shift we're seeing. We aren't yet seeing a huge unemployed labor force in tech that it's growing, because like we may see this, right? Because more and more companies are like, look, if we go into a recession, we're going to definitely see it. We're not in a recession yet, even though everybody's talking about recession. We're still not in a recession, and that's why we're not seeing it yet.
Okay. But while the engineers complain about how like a small they don't want to work in the smaller startup because they have been treated so well, like it's hard for them to change back into our like normal like general workplace.
Well, some of these startups are actually, their advantage of hiring these people is treating them better than the big companies.
Oh, okay. Oh, really? Better?
Being a little more flexible, a little more,
Okay.
and again, it depends on the startup's leadership. But look, honestly, if you're a smaller company and you want to attract top talent, what are you going to do? Right? You're going to treat them better, right? You're going to have to show them, you're going to give them something that a bigger company can't. Some of them are disillusioned from being laid off on the bigger companies, and they're willing to take a chance now on smaller companies. Some just want a job as quickly as they can get one
Right.
to make their mortgage payments. They're going to take the smaller companies. So there's a variety of reasons, but I think a lot of engineers, I help hire for our startups. I was talking to a lot of AI engineers that got laid off in the past month, a lot, because I was looking, to hire up for some project we're working on in AI. Talking to people from Google who just got laid off, talking to people from Amazon who just got laid off, talking to like top tier people coming out of universities with PhDs who would have gone to Google or would have gone to Amazon or Microsoft, but they were all super, super excited to join the startup, right?
Oh.
And I was even saying to them, because it's startup, I was saying, we can't match what you would have earned at Google. The job is not going to be secure because it's a startup and we have to go through rounds of funding, and we might miss a round. And they're like, we don't care.
Oh, okay.
We're ready for that. So this is my personal experience, is that these people coming out of the big companies, they're open. Like they're like, and some of them are very excited. Okay, well, this is my chance to work for a startup. I worked for a big company and now it's my chance. So it's a little counterintuitive. I thought that they would want another big stable job. And I'm I'm asking them like, don't you want another environment like, Google or Amazon? And they're like, no, I'm totally open to doing startups. And we got a ton of resumes. I mean, this is top tier AI engineers, right? Like machine learning engineers, flooded. We couldn't even review them all. So, so I granted, not all of them were out of Google and Amazon and Microsoft. A lot of them were recent grads, right? Because it's very hard for them to find, but really from top tier schools with, masters or PhDs. So, that's what I'm seeing personally in the marketplace.
Okay. So I actually want to be in an innovative environment more than like high company like perks.
They want both. Like
Okay.
Well, you're a human being, right? If you can get a job that allows you to be innovative, allows you to get a good amount of upside and stock options, and gives you all the perks, they'll take it. Right. So these are they're smart people, right? They're looking at the landscape, but they're looking now, and to companies that they may have said for sure no, like, whenever the startup is too risky, it's too early stage, they don't even have, fully formed health plans or other benefits in place. They would have definitely said no. Now they're saying, yeah, that I might consider that, or I would consider that.
Okay. And that changed because of they have been laid off.
That
so they're
changed.
now open.
It's a direct repercussion of layoffs, because they know they're not getting another job at Amazon. They're not getting another job at Google in the near future, or Microsoft. So startups, taking a risk in a startup isn't that much of a risk. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you liked it, hit the subscribe button and share it with your friends. You can help us create more great content by subscribing and sharing. Also, if you want to access our online startup program, our investor network, and our entrepreneur resources, just come to founderspace.com.
Hey, my name's Andrew McGivern, and I'm the host of the Great News Podcast. Are you tired of all the doom and gloom news from mainstream media? You'll find none of that here. Instead, you'll find inspiring stories and developments that are making the world a better place. Now, there's no shortage of bad things happening in the world, but there are great things happening too, and in almost every measurable way. Things are better now than ever in history. From infant mortality rates to poverty, cancer, and economic prosperity, if you can measure it, we're probably better off now than in the past. So, if you want to hear more great news, subscribe to Great News, the podcast. You can find it in your favorite podcast app, or go to www.greatnewspodcast.com.